Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 6th, 2024 from the Braddock Bay Hawkwatch. Kim and I started out the day at the Braddock Bay East Spit where it was mostly cloudy, and we had an excellent start to the day. Here we have two different species of swans. On the right we have the familiar mute swan, and on the left we see a swan that has a black bill. Now let's notice a couple things about it, because about a month ago, we were getting all of the tundra swans migrating through, which have black bills, but actually this is a different species. We see that this swan is nearly the same size as the mute swan, and we see that the bill is really large and long and sloping. So this is actually not a tundra swan, but rather a trumpeter swan. And this is a species I've been trying to track down for the year, so I was glad that one showed up. And a fun fact about trumpeter swans is they are the heaviest flying bird that we get in this area. They can weigh upwards of 23 pounds. We continued out the East Spit and all the way to the end of the barrier island and back. And the main highlight there was two great egrets out in the marsh. You can see great egrets are large white wading birds with large yellow bills, and you can even see a little bit of green in front of the eye when they're in breeding plumage like this. From the East Spit, we had 41 species this morning. Next, we headed over to Braddock Bay Park to start the Hawkwatch around 9 a.m. and it was mostly cloudy to start the day, but throughout the day it really cleared really nicely and was almost full blue sky by the afternoon. The winds were moderate out of the northwest and they felt pretty chilly in the morning. Finally, by mid-afternoon, the temperatures had come up quite a bit and it was fairly pleasant as the winds died down towards the end of the day and shifted more westerly. And normally we think of northwesterly winds as a slightly unfavorable wind, but today the raptors and especially the turkey vultures did not care, and we ended up with the biggest day of the season so far. And turkey vulture was definitely the bird of the day, so why don't we start off with a photo of one. Turkey vultures are two-toned, black and silver underneath, small black head, and a somewhat long tail. Here we have a group of 5 large dark water birds with long necks and long tails. These are double-crested cormorants. Here we have an adult bald eagle, and it looks like it has a fish. I always like when my phone rings and I see that it's one of the hawk banders on the other side of the bay, because that usually means that they've spotted something good that's headed our way. In this case, it was this small, compact vulture with a really short tail and white only at the wingtips. This is a black vulture, which is much less common up here than turkey vulture. So for turkey vultures, we get about 30,000 of them over the course of the season. Black vultures, we usually get somewhere between 1 and 10 for the season. So it's a rare species up in this area. Now, where Kim is from in Delaware, it's a very, very, very common species. So when I called down to her that there was a black vulture coming, I don't think she cared very much, but it's a good bird for Rochester. Here we have a buteo. We see dark patagial bars and a belly band. This is a red-tailed hawk, and we see the dark trailing edge to the wing and red tail that indicate that this is an adult red-tailed hawk. And we see a little bit of a bump in this area. That's probably a full crop, indicating that it has eaten recently. Here's another adult red-tailed hawk, and just notice that this one's a little more lightly marked, not showing much of a belly band at all, and there's just a certain amount of variation between different red-tailed hawks. By mid-morning, as the sun was coming out more, a decent turkey vulture flight was picking up, and we were getting a few hundred of them every hour. Here we have a large dark raptor with a large whitish head. Still has some white throughout the underside. This is an older, immature bald eagle. Here we have a hawk that's shaped like a flying cross with a long tail, large head, and long wings with rounded wingtips. We should be thinking accipiter. We see that orange barring underneath. We know it's not a goshawk, so we know it's either a sharp-shinned hawk or Cooper's hawk, and it's the adults that have the orange underneath like this. We see that the outer tail feathers are a little bit shorter than the central ones, giving the tail a bit of a rounded appearance, and that combined with the large head make this an adult Cooper's hawk. Here's the top side of the same adult Cooper's hawk. Notice that tail pattern that's typical for Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks. They're kind of grayish blue on top, but the one thing we can look for to distinguish sharp-shinned hawks from Cooper's hawks is that the Cooper's hawks, when they're adults, have a capped appearance. So we see this dark cap to the head, but then the nape, which is the back of the neck, is paler before you get to the darker back color. So that indicates this is a Cooper's hawk. If this were a sharp-shinned hawk, this dark color would run all the way from the top of the head down onto the back uninterrupted. And the turkey vultures continued to come, and sometimes the flight line was out more towards the lake, sometimes it was directly overhead, giving us a really nice view, and sometimes it was more off to our left over the parkway. And there didn't seem to be any reason for why it was shifting one direction or the other because the wind was staying the same. But throughout the day, the flight line shifted back and forth many times. Here we have a small raptor with pointed wings. We should be thinking falcon, and we see it has dark streaking underneath and some white bands to the tail, indicating that this is a merlin. And here's the top side of the same merlin. Notice they're kind of bluish gray on top, and you can see some banding to the tail. Here we have 4 tannish gray birds with long necks and long beaks and long trailing legs. These are 4 sandhill cranes, and we had a total of 7 sandhill cranes migrate by today. Here's a hawk that's shaped like a flying cross. Notice the long tail, large head, long straight wings with rounded wingtips. This is an accipiter. We notice that the tip of the tail is a bit rounded because the outer tail feathers are shorter than the central ones. The head is big, and if we look at the markings on the upper breast, we see kind of a teardrop streaking that's mostly concentrated on the upper breast. These are the field marks that make it a juvenile Cooper's hawk. Here's a hawk where we see dark patagial bars and a belly band, so we should be thinking red-tailed hawk, but we do not see a dark trailing edge to the wing or a red tail. It's more of a lighter brownish tail with some banding. This is a juvenile red-tailed hawk. Here we have a large, lanky, black and white raptor carrying a fish. This is an osprey. Here we have another juvenile red-tailed hawk. Notice this one has very faint patagial bars and a fairly faint belly band as well. Here we can see that banding on the tail a little bit better. You can tell it's not that bright red tail that the adult red-tailed hawks show. And we can also see another good field mark in this photo, which is that on the inner primaries of the wing, which are these feathers here, we see kind of a translucent square. Now remember, on red-shouldered hawks, we see a translucent crescent here near the wingtips, but on the red-tailed juveniles, we see a translucent square. Here we have a raptor with a long tail, somewhat narrow, long wings that are pointed towards the wingtips. Overall, kind of a lanky shape, holding its wings up into a little bit of a V. Very pale overall underneath with black wingtips and black trailing edge to the secondaries. This is an adult male northern harrier, also known as a gray ghost. Here we have the side view of a turkey vulture, and notice how they hold their wings up into a V shape called a dihedral. Here we have an adult bald eagle high overhead in a glide posture. And that one was closely followed by this immature bald eagle. Notice the white, especially here in the wing pit area. That's an area you really won't see white on a golden eagle. Whenever you see a lot of splotchy white underneath, that makes it an immature bald eagle. Here we have a small raptor with pointed wings. We should be thinking falcon. We see some stripes on the face, and we see an orange back and tail and black and blue wings. This is a male American kestrel. Here we see a large dark raptor with a large head, overall dark on the head and underneath on the body. A lot of white here in the wing coverts, especially in that wing pit area. And we see an even trailing edge to the wings. This is a juvenile bald eagle, so one that was born last year. Here we have a large corvid that was soaring. We see a large bill, and we also see that diamond-shaped tail where the outer tail feathers are quite a bit shorter than the central ones. This is a common raven. Here we have a large dark raptor. We see a small head. We also see some white patches in the center of the wings and a white base to the tail. This is an immature golden eagle. And here's that same bird from a distance. Again, notice how small the head looks, especially compared to the tail. And notice those 3 white points, one in the center of each wing and the white base to the tail. Those are good field marks to look for immature golden eagles. Here we have a small raptor with pointed wings. We have a small falcon, and it's overall light underneath with some vertical streaking to the breast. This is a female American kestrel. Here we have another osprey with a fish, and I bet we have some fishermen watching my videos who can tell us what species of fish this is. And the grass around the platform is pretty wet, and at the end of the day we had this ring-billed gull drop in for a tasty snack. The turkey vulture flight really ended up picking up towards the end of the afternoon, so I ended up staying late. Normally, I would only stay until 5 o'clock. That would be the usual end time for the Hawkwatch, but today I ended up staying until 7 p.m., and the turkey vultures were flying right up until then. In fact, those 2 extra inning hours were some of the biggest hours of the day, with hundreds and hundreds of turkey vultures. So really spectacular turkey vulture flight, and ended up with a really huge total. Taking a look at the eBird list from the Hawkwatch, today we had 57 species. I had 1 new species for the season today, which was trumpeter swan. And taking a look at the hawk count report for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 1 black vulture, 3,790 turkey vultures, 1 osprey, 9 bald eagles, 11 northern harriers, 3 sharp-shinned hawks, 12 Cooper's hawks. For Buteos, we had 2 red-shouldered hawks and 51 red-tailed hawks. We had 1 golden eagle, and for falcons, we had 5 American kestrels and 1 merlin, for a grand total of 3,887 migrating raptors today, the biggest single day so far this season. That brings the April total to 4,525, and the season total to 12,645. Taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, it's looking mostly sunny with a high in the low to mid 50s and light north-northeast winds. So northeasterly winds usually aren't the best for us, but they're going to be fairly light, and there's going to be a lot of sunshine, so the thermals should be good tomorrow. There's obviously a lot of turkey vultures moving through. We had a lot today. Looking at other Hawkwatches like Hamburg and Presque Isle, they were getting a lot of vultures in recent days as well. So there should be more vultures in the pipeline. And we had a big flight at the end of the day, which should pick up again in the morning. My only concern would be that those northeasterly winds might push them further inland. So I don't know if we'll be able to see them from the platform. We may eventually shift over to Frisbee Hill. We'll just have to play it by ear and see what happens. But with those sunny skies and light winds, I bet we'll get a decent amount of raptor activity tomorrow. And for Monday, it's looking cloudy now with a slight chance of a rain shower, high in the mid-50s, and easterly winds at 10 to 15 miles per hour. If those winds do stay easterly, sometimes that keeps the raptors down lower and we get better looks. Although if it's going to be cloudy, I'm not sure how much of a flight we'll get because there won't be many thermals. Although it's looking like that might be a high layer of cloud, so I'm not completely ruling out the day. We'll have a better look at the forecast tomorrow. And for Tuesday, intervals of clouds and sun, very warm with a high up around 60 and light to moderate easterly winds again. So we'll expect light to moderate migration for Tuesday. All right, well, what a great day of birding with that trumpeter swan to start the day and then a really big vulture flight at the Hawkwatch. I thought it might be a decent day today, but I guess with all the poor weather we had recently, it just backed up the turkey vultures and they were itching to move. And that's why we got the really big numbers today, and hopefully that will continue into the next few days as we're still in the peak of the turkey vulture migration, and other species should be picking up their migration as well. And at some point, we're going to start seeing the first broad-winged hawks of the season as well. So lots of exciting things to look forward to out at the Braddock Bay Hawkwatch. Hope to see you out there soon. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.